Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar discussing Microsoft Copilot Studio and the future of accounting systems. We are thrilled that you've joined us for this webinar today and want you to feel free to reach out with questions at any time using the Q&A or chat features of Zoom. We have a lot of content today, and if we do not address all of the questions that you have during this time, we will reach out to you afterwards. Following the webinar, we will send out an email to all participants with the slides attached, but please allow about 48 hours for that email to arrive. Leading our webinar today is Jason Barnes, who is our CRM and Power Platform Practice Manager. Jason has been with LBMC Technology Solutions for more than 10 years and joined us with a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Technology from Tennessee Tech University and holds a certification as a Microsoft Cloud Solution Expert. Before starting his career, Jason held significant positions such as partner and CRM practice manager at Oasis Solutions. Jason's extensive experience in CRM and Power Platform software solutions allows him to understand how technologies impact companies as a whole, and he works with all departments influenced by technology, providing consulting services and training, leveraging technology to achieve the business objectives. He is also an active member of the Dynamics user group communities. So please join me today in welcoming Jason as our presenter.
Thanks, Margaret. Well, as always, we appreciate everyone spending some time with us, and I hope that everyone is really excited about our topic this morning. Today, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, or AI, as everybody hears. Specifically, we're going to talk about how AI assistants are starting to transform accounting processes and really empower our financial teams and people, really just paving the way for like a new era in financial management. So it's very exciting. So we're also going to talk about the latest Microsoft tools and solutions that can really help businesses realize the benefits of AI technology. So it's been a really exciting topic for our clients this year, and it's an exciting time for those in the industry, really. I mean, after all, there's so many transformative technologies, that we'll all see in our lifetimes. For me, it's personal computers, the internet, smartphones, cloud computing, self-driving cars, right? I guess I may have, dated myself with some of those, but AI it's being compared to the advent of the telephone. We're talking 150 years ago. So this really is a key point and just really a cool time in our history, without a doubt. So before I dive into it, though, for those of you who are not, or I guess many of you actually have already worked with LBMC, but for those of you who are not as familiar with all we do, we can help businesses with just about any technology needs they might have, whether it's network engineering, technical help desk needs, or deploying ERP or CRM software. We have teams of consultants and architects that can really help you build a more secure network, or implement software, or develop some kind of custom app. If you can combine that, though, with everything that our LBMC family of companies can do, it really does sort of make LBMC like that one-stop shop, right? That can help you with just about anything you can need. And of course, the joke is we do everything but clean your offices, right? So you can rely on us for all those needs. But why choose us? So, at LBMC, we do feel like we have something really special here, and really something that's really unique in our industry. And we believe in the professionals, the consultants, and engineers that we employ here really are second to none. But all of those awards and all those accolades that our team receives over the years, they really wouldn't be possible with, of course, without our amazing customers. So we do thank all of you for your support, and of course always appreciate the opportunity to share in your successes as well. All right. So what we're going to do today, the session, what I'd like to do is answer some key AI questions that I'm sure all of you have, right? So what is the technology used to deploy AI in the workplace? How is AI automating these accounting and finance tasks? What Copilot Studio can do and what it's going to offer finance teams, and how they would even get started. And then what's next in this whole new world of AI powered finance? So we all know, and I'm sure everybody would agree, that the demands on finance teams are only increasing. They're not getting smaller or shorter, they're getting more complex and just more time consuming. But the problem is, up to this point, the tools that we have available to us have never been able to keep pace, right? So, for example, accounting staff, they'll spend thousands of hours a year entering invoice data, matching POs, routing approvals, and it boils down to probably 60 to 80% of their time is really spent on what are really repetitive tasks. Reconciliations, don't get me started, right? Reconciling, bank accounts, credit cards, all the, if you do intercompany transactions, all of that is very tedious and really time intensive, right? And then we get to forecasting. Of course, everybody's always asking, us, hey, I need an accurate forecast. We're making some big decisions coming up. And those forecasts always rely heavily on spreadsheets and a lot of historical data, of course. And the problem is, though, a lot of times those will miss some of the real-time shifts because a lot of times they take so long to put together. There things can arise while those forecasts are being assembled, and obviously makes it less accurate. Fraud, okay? Fraudulent or non-compliant transactions, a lot of times those can go undetected until we actually get to an audit, and that's not good. Fraudulent transactions, they estimate cost businesses about 5% of their annual revenue each year. That's a big number. So certainly we could easily justify spending that money on the tools and technology that will help us prevent that fraud and those non-compliant transactions from happening to begin with. And then, of course, reporting, right? Reporting. Everybody wants more of it. Everybody wants it now, right then. They need it yesterday. So producing those accounting reports, those financial reports, requires a lot of data pulls, right? A lot of just manual aggregation of data, formatting, and then of course you got to try to make sure it reconciles across maybe one or more systems or data sources, and obviously that is very time consuming. So let's talk about a tool that we can use to create and deploy our own AI assistants, right? To help us solve some of these accounting challenges. So I'll say, I hope you are all getting excited because this is, in my opinion, the catch-up technology that we've all needed, right, for decades, right? This is decades in the making. So here it is. So I hope everybody's excited because we're about to dive into it. So the first thing I feel like I need to do is, before we kind of get into the more technical details, I do want to say that I am covering AI assistants today. And there is a difference between AI assistants and AI agents, which, some of you may already be familiar with or have heard of. But the best way for everyone to kind of explain that difference is to think of AI assistants as tools designed to enhance the productivity of an employee. Whereas, an AI agent is sort of like the ultimate autopilot. It's designed to completely sort of take over the thinking required to complete a process or a task, right? So AI assistants are designed to really support human decision making, rather than just completely replace it, right? So think of them as the co-pilot. They're helping accounting teams work smarter, not harder. So, whether it's, doing something like trying to find some key insights or automating some repetitive tasks or streamlining workflows, for example, AI assistants, they're context aware. So, they can actually enhance our productivity while keeping our expertise as human beings at the core of that process or task. So it doesn't take the human factor out. So an example, an AI assistant, in Excel could create a draft of a cash flow report and then maybe summarize the monthly expenses by department, right? So that saves the team time on the preparation of that analysis or that report, but the accountant still reviews and finalizes that report, right? So, but a far more sort of autonomous, what we call an agentic process, right? So that's when we start talking about agents. An AI agent that might be connected to accounts payable could receive an invoice, extract the data from that invoice, match it against the PO, flag or note any differences or discrepancies, and then route it for some sort of a accounting approval. And then if approved, it could update the ledger directly or automatically, right? So that agent executes the workflow there end to end, right? And it would maybe get escalated if, for example, it encounters some kind of error, but executing it from end to end is the key point there. So think of the difference like asking, hey, AI, help me do this versus, hey, AI, do this for me, right? So in all AI assistants, they're going to reduce that repetitive work, right? They're going to save everybody time, and they're going to allow employees to focus on those, more, I guess, higher value or strategic sort of activities that a lot of times get undervalued or really kind of missed or left out because they're too busy doing the day to day. So this is really what that boils down to, is helping with that day to day. So let's talk about the tool itself, Copilot Studio. So this is Microsoft's answer to all of this, right? This is their AI tool. So specifically, Copilot Studio is what they call a low-code platform. It doesn't involve a lot of developers' tool set or skill set to be able to use it. But it allows users to design these AI assistants, right? It'll actually let you create AI agents too. But again, that's not necessarily what we're focused on today, is to focus on the assistants. But the idea is that these assistants can understand your accounting workflows and processes, understand the rules that govern those processes, and then it can understand your data, right? You train these assistants to be able to recognize, hey, this is your data, this is the process that you trained me to implement or to execute when asked, right? Again, it's not assistants only work when we ask them to, right? And those assistants, we call those co-pilots. Okay, so that's in Microsoft's vernacular, right? But that is a term, though. This co-pilot term has started to be more widely used, though, throughout the industry. So it is more common. Co-pilots created in Copilot Studio are, think of it as like custom AI helpers, right? Allow a business, they can design these co-pilots to kind of fit their own needs. So they're a step beyond a lot of the built-in co-pilots that some of you may already be familiar with that are part of Microsoft 365. So if that's news to everyone, there's co-pilots available for apps like Word, Excel, Outlook, and Teams. And those are all already, sort of making everyday life easier. They can help you draft emails and summarize documents, analyze data, create reports, of course. And so I will say on that note, I do have an exciting announcement to cover a little bit later in the presentation in regards to Microsoft 365 Copilot. So I think everybody will be excited about that announcement. But these studio copilots, the custom ones, saying these are custom, these studio copilots go further though. They're going to let you sort of tailor the AI assistant to your specific workflow and the data sources and the business rules, like I was talking about earlier. So for an example, an accounting team could maybe build a copilot that answers vendor questions about invoices. We could put that thing out on a portal or give them access to that copilot or bot, if that were the interface we use. It's kind of like a chat experience, right? Allow the vendor to ask those questions, or maybe it helps employees. We could build one that helps employees submit expense reports correctly, right? I know that that's always a big ticket item with a lot of accounting and finance teams, is dealing with expense reports. So maybe we have a copilot that supports an employee as they do that. Or maybe it explains, financial policies to operations folks or sales team members or that kind of thing. Or maybe it's new accounting folks. So each one of these assistants would be trained on your internal data, right? It would actually be hooked into your systems. So they really would, sort of speak your language, right? But I will say one of the biggest advantages of Copilot Studio that I want to make sure we talk about is that your data stays private. Okay. Nothing your Copilot would see get shared with any other companies or their co-pilots, right? And it isn't exposed to Microsoft's sort of the foundation model, what they call it, sort of like the engine underneath the hood there. That it would be sort of outside of your instance. It's not shared there. Has no access to it. So what that means is that your financial records and your customer data would be safe. You can build and connect your co-pilots using this low-code platform, hook it into the various Microsoft services and Dataverse like Dynamics 365. That would be Business Central or Power Platform. But it can also still connect to external systems and apps, Dynamics GP. We have a lot of folks on the webinar today that are GP users. So you can connect it to both Dynamics 365 sort of cloud apps and services, as well as external apps as well, right? And all I know in your data is staying protected and compliant, right? So bottom line is, whether it's the built-in Microsoft 365 copilots or it's these custom studio copilots that I've just talked about, these AI assistants can, they're designed to make you work faster, smarter, and really, more secure, right? So what that looks like, let's kind of talk about how Copilot Studio fits into the Microsoft ecosystem here. So forgive me if it's a little blurry. I tried to find the highest resolution I could. But as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft 365 has built-in copilots in a lot of the apps that we're using, right? So Word, Excel, Outlook, and Teams. You can see those out here. It's represented in the kind of in the middle there where it says Microsoft 365, right? They help, like some of those sort of everyday tasks I was talking about. But it's part of the thing I want to make sure everyone understands is that Copilot Studio is actually part of Power Platform as well, right? So with Power Platform, these copilots they can connect to all these other services. So you can see up in the sort of middle section there, it says Biz Apps and Power Platform. That's a substantial advantage over some of the other platforms that are out there, because what that allows us to do is to build custom apps and custom automation and workflow, and then allow a co-pilot, an AI assistant, to then leverage those custom apps and automations. So we can actually use a co-pilot to call a piece of automation that's running in Power Automate, for example, that's doing a variety of different things, right? So they don't just answer questions, is the point I'm trying to make there. Because of this whole ecosystem, it can do way more than just ask questions, or answer questions, I should say. It can actually take action, right? These copilots can actually take actions. So, and what's even better though is that, with Copilot Studio, let's say that we want to extend or enhance one of those pre-built Microsoft 365 copilots, the ones like we were talking about that are in, Excel or Outlook or CRM, for example. We can do that. It's like it allow us to add new capabilities, or for example, you could enhance like the summary that's generated by a copilot, for example. So that's, we can extend and enhance the capabilities of existing sort of out of the box copilots as well. So very powerful there. And all of this ties together really well. So the next thing I want to do, because I feel it was important to talk about a particular topic. And I know when it comes to discussion about AI, there can be a lot of angst. There can be a lot of confusion about, okay, so with AI, where do I fit in? What does that mean for everyday, work life? Who's doing the work? Who's not? So I like to just kind of spend a few minutes just really talking about that. First of all, again, co-pilots, they're really just built to help with speed, right? They can help with those, like I said before, repetitive, sort of high volume tasks, things like processing invoices or reconciling or selling accounts, or maybe drafting reports, right? The thing is, they don't get tired, they don't make copy paste errors, they can work around the clock if you want them to. So I want you to think of them as like these digital assistants that help clear the busy work, right? So that we can work faster. Okay. That is the context that everyone needs to kind of take away with these co-pilots, these AI co-pilots, right? Or AI assistants. Okay. They're built to help make you faster, make the whole operation quicker, better, faster. And that's going to help with growth, right? So in comparison, humans, we bring the skills that AI can't replicate, right? It can't replicate judgment or understand context every time. And it certainly can help develop strategy, right? So accountants, they ask the why behind the numbers. They manage relationships, and they make decisions in gray areas where these rules that I was talking about, they aren't clear. They can't be clear, right? So the real value comes when you combine both, right? You combine AI, these co-pilots, let it handle the grunt work, right? Sort of just the mundane, repetitive grunt work, and let us, the humans, focus on the insight, focus on communication, leadership, and then of course strategy, business growth, right? So that's one thing that a distinction that I want to make sure that we discuss in the call or the webinar. So much like our employees, it's like with co-pilots, we deploy them, hire them, right? Then we train them, and then we lock them in a room and have them crunch numbers 24/7, right? So no, I hope nobody is locking anybody in a room and having them crunch, numbers for reports 24/7. So all kidding aside, co-pilots are not replacing anyone. They are helping us work smarter, be more efficient, more accurate, and most importantly, it's going to allow our finance teams to focus on those more strategic decisions, right? They're really needed to grow a business, right? So this we should think of this as an opportunity to start, really getting a chance to focus, on the business, not in the business. And I think that's an important distinction. So I think what we're going to do next is we have a quick poll question that I think Dawn's going to help us with. Dawn, are you there?
I'm here. We're going to launch this. Want to get a feel for what your experience is with Microsoft Copilot Studio or AI assistants. And so the poll question is, how does your organization use copilots or AI assistants today? And the first response is, our team uses one or more every day, and we are proficient in using AI in our business. The second choice is you're just beginning to leverage AI tools and are not quite proficient yet. And then the third choice is our teams are open to the idea of using AI tools, but we haven't started using them yet. And the final option is I'm just here to figure out what all the AI fuss is about. So you're here to learn and see what's available. So I will give a couple more moments for people to respond to that, to give us an idea of um, where our audience is with regard to AI assistants and Microsoft Copilots. And here are the results, Jason. We have 50% of the audience. They're just beginning to leverage AI tools. Another 33% say that they're open to the idea of using AI tools, but they haven't started using them yet. And then we've got 11% that are here to learn. And we have 6% of our audience, really impressive, who are quite proficient on copilots and AI assistants.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody taking the time for the responses. That's really exciting. So we've got some folks that have kind of dabbled into this, and some of it sounds like they've already made quite a few strides into it. So that's awesome. So I think now that we have our poll done, let's go ahead and change topics to talking about how AI and Copilot Studio can empower our finance teams, right? So where does this really come in, right? How can this technology be applied? So, as I said before, really the objective of implementing an AI assistant or co-pilot is to help finance teams become more, more self-sufficient, but be able to automate and really access some of the insight, I guess you'd say, instantly though, without coding, right? So these are things with, in the past, you might have developed a report, had to use a complex query, in a simple, some type of analysis or assessment that took you many days, perhaps, to aggregate all the information together. So let's focus on how this AI technology can be applied to really help out our accounting departments. So first, AI doesn't just automate things like data entry, right? It can actually make it smarter, learning from user feedback and the fact that it's integrated directly with your systems or is leveraging data sources like a data warehouse, for example. But the challenge there, like I was saying earlier, is that manual data entry and things like invoice processing, they really eat up a lot of staff time, and it can be error prone, right? So imagine, like I think I mentioned this before, imagine we use AI, right? Whether it's a co-pilot or whether it's an agent, but we could process those documents, right? Like I was saying before, we can extract data from the invoices, we can and process data from receipts or contracts, and then we could make some adjustments or transactions once approved directly back into our accounting system, or update the data warehouse, or update CRM. There's bottom line is it's about faster cycle times, right? Reduced errors, of course, and then obviously, pretty significant time savings, right? So we're saving hundreds of hours of manual entry per year. We're going to improve our accuracy, of course. And then, who wouldn't want to speed up their month-end close, right? So think of it as having like a digital assistant that never gets tired of processing invoices. That would be a miracle, right? Well, miracles happen and it is possible. So I think that from a data entry standpoint, there's a lot to gain there. Reconciliations. So this is another one that's a very common topic. So with AI, think of it this way: reconciliations kind of shift from a manual thing, a manual intensive process, like a line by line process, to a more like high speed, sort of exception focused, more like review, right? So the AI is surfacing all the exceptions. It's trying to find, where there's potential for reconciliation issues and discrepancies. So things like, our bank reconciliations, our intercompany reconciliations, like I was saying earlier. And of course, all that exception handling, as I said, it's time intensive, it's very, very time heavy. And so, you could think of AI as being able to automatically match those transactions across the accounts, right? So it could flag the differences and discrepancies, highlight them or just note them, and even suggest correcting entries. So it could even say, hey, I see this discrepancy, I would make this recommendation to correct it, right? So, and then like I was saying earlier, this thing gets smarter. They can get smarter as they're used, right? So those become more and more accurate, right? So that's going to cut reconciliation time down from days to maybe hours, and the whole time you're making it more accurate. So that's a win-win. So this reduction in time, it would also minimize audit findings and minimize compliance risks. So because it's been able to flag these things and it's more proactive. So that's something that would definitely be advantageous when it comes to audits. And allows, of course, the teams to focus, like I was saying, strictly on those exceptions and not just these sort of like, routine matching, matches that they do where they're just constantly going through and just matching all day every day. So it definitely would save a lot of time. So AI doesn't just reconcile. It continuously learns though from those past adjustments. So like I said, it's going to get smarter over time. And that's when it comes to reconciliations, it's so hard to miss things. So if you have this AI powered reconciliation tool, it's going to get better and better as you use it. I.e., it's going to catch more and more of the potential discrepancies. Forecasting. So forecasting is often, as we all know, sort of a spreadsheet heavy and sort of backward looking process, really. So, with AI, we could then rely on more predictive analytics that would use historical transactions, of course, payment patterns. That's sort of something that I know would be great, nice to have. But I imagine most of us on the call, we're not analyzing payment patterns every day. So you can imagine using AI and let it do some of these things that you've always wanted to do, just never had the bandwidth. The thing is, the AI could even look at some external market data, right, to help generate a more accurate forecast. So there's different sources that you could link it to, allow it to take some of this market information and leverage that as well. So obviously, the impact being better cash flow visibility, and of course, more accurate financial planning, of course, right? So improved cash flow, better working capital management, of course. And then overall, I think it's going to provide a stronger decision making for investments or even some cost savings. So AI is going to give the finance leaders that early warning system is the way I like to think of it, right? So it's that early warning system. It's going to help them see the risks and even the opportunities, before the books are actually closed, right? So I think quite an advantage when it comes to our financial planning. All right. And then, of course, it would be an accounting conversation without talking about, fraud prevention and really risk management. So, we were talking about before, I think this is a very real use case, you might say, fraudulent transactions and compliance violations. I think most of us have probably experienced that. They go a lot of times unnoticed until it's kind of too late, right? So I think the fact that we could use AI, and machine learning, these machine learning models, right? So to try to look for patterns in, for example, vendor payments, expenses, and even the journal entries to detect those anomalies, right? So like the last 10 payments to this vendor have been less than $1,000. Why is this one 10,000, right? So the human eye can catch some of the bigger, variances, but not some of those that are closer or tighter to the normal, payment amount, for example, right? So the AI can be trained to monitor that, and you could set thresholds and train it on what those thresholds might be, right? What's considered to be an anomaly. So it's not just like just do that out of the box. You can train it to work the way and detect the way you would want it to. So obviously, the benefit there is that early fraud detection, reduced obviously risk, and exposure, and then ultimately just stronger compliance across the board, right? So that can obviously result in fewer financial losses and maybe compliance penalties if that's a situation that occurs for you. And then, of course, everyone can benefit from these sort of like strengthened internal controls and always being prepared for an audit, right? So there's a certain satisfaction being in the accounting world and knowing that, hey, bring it on. You want to do an audit, you got it. I'm ready, right? There's a certain satisfaction for accounting folks when it comes to being ready for an audit. So, I like for you to think of AI like this sort of 24/7 auditor, right? So it's constantly scanning the entire accounting, department, you might say, right? The entire accounting practice, looking for red flags and things that, that humans might miss. All right. And of course, reporting. So reporting becomes, just this continuous, interactive, and this very labor intensive thing, right? For accounting teams. And we've all been there. We've all, had, maybe an executive or someone in leadership ask for a particular financial analysis or report. And we find out that the data sits in 3 or 4 different data sources, and it's going to require a lot of reconciliation and validation, and just making sure that we're going to provide them with accurate details or accurate assessment. So um, you know, we often find that this too is going to require all this formatting and all these data pools, and I mean that's just a huge amount of time. And by now, a lot of folks have found new tools like Power BI and some of the other reporting platforms that are out there. So that's getting better. In fact, some of those like Power BI does have an AI agent already built into it. So that's great. But what happens if you're pulling from other data sources and other maybe outside or ancillary systems and data sources that aren't necessarily tied to your Power BI? So that's where we could leverage a Copilot. So, with a Copilot, that, those queries that finance teams are, have to ask, what were the last quarter's top expense drivers, right? And the Copilot could generate a dashboard or a chart, you know, directly from that question, right? Because those queries and these automated reporting tools are connected and can read and extract the data from those sources directly, and they understand it, right? Because we train them to recognize what that data is, right? That's the difference, is that the AI is trained to understand what that data ultimately is. It doesn't even have to, have an in-depth sort of training on the data. It'll basically ask you questions. The experience for someone that is training an AI is that you basically upload examples of the data, and the AI will start asking questions, right? So you're basically training the model on what that data consists of. So pretty neat stuff. In fact, a lot of times it'll even recognize, just when you first upload it, it'll recognize what it is. Oh, that's a cash flow statement, So it's pretty neat. But ultimately, when it comes to reporting and AI's impact on reporting is, we're talking about faster reporting cycles, right? So more self-service stuff, more self-service sort of insights and analysis. And that really is ultimately going to serve and support more strategic decision making and much faster, right? So AI really is changing reporting from hindsight into more real-time insight, right? So yeah, it really does. It's making finance a sort of like a true business partner, you might think of it. All right. So now that we've learned a bit about the technology and how all these AI assistants and co-pilots can help finance teams, I thought it'd be a good idea to go over just a few case studies of AI in finance, right? And these are real world documented case studies. They're actually published by Deloitte. So they're, in my opinion, a really good representation of how we can leverage this technology every day, and how it's been applied in these particular case studies. So first off, so there's a technology company, specifically their accounting team was faced with a lot of constant pressure during the month-end close. We've all been there, right? It should take days, and it'll take a week. Lots of manual reconciliations, report preparation, and of course, a lot of error checking, and that all causes those delays. So the solution for them was creating a month-end close Copilot, right? They used Copilot Studio. They connected it to their ERP system and their reporting platform, which already contained a lot of historical data. A lot of reporting data was just in the query that was used for it. It was already there. The Copilot automatically checked for missing entries, right? It highlighted reconciliation exceptions, and then it generated a draft of the financial statements for review, right? So that company, this technology company, they shortened their month-end close by 3 days, right? They reduced those last minute errors that we all experience, and they gave their leadership faster access to more accurate financials. So month-end close Copilot, it's possible. Somebody's already done it. So how about an accounts payable Copilot, right? So in this situation, there's a finance team at a manufacturing company, and they were beginning to get really overwhelmed by vendor inquiries about things like, invoice status and stage, and where is this in the process, and they really just spent, the staff, I should say, just spent many hours each week just answering these repetitive questions from these vendors, right? And it's all basic stuff. I mean, there's not a whole lot, but basically they just want to know when they're going to get paid for the most part. So they created a custom, AP or vendor Copilot in Copilot Studio. In this case, it was connected to Dynamics 365 BC, Business Central. And now those vendors can ask the Copilot directly about invoice status or payment timelines, or were there any discrepancies, right? So they're interacting with a Copilot instead of having to interact directly with the AP team, right? So obviously that company cut the emailing down by like 75%, right? And that freed up their staff to again focus, like we've been talking about, focus on those higher level financial, more strategic needs, right? That financial analysis. And then of course, at the same time, the vendors were happier, right? Because they had ready access once they learned about the new Copilot self-service type experience. They made them happy, right? Because they could just log it, they could go directly in this case, a portal, vendor portal, and they could just simply ask, hey, what's the status of invoice, blah, blah, blah. And it would return that response. So ready access. All right. This is another good one. I spoke on this one a little earlier. So imagine an employee expense Copilot. So a consulting firm, was struggling with employees, just making errors in their expense submissions, and that was leading to delays and the reimbursement process, and really just creating extra work for the accounting staff. So using Copilot Studio, they created a Copilot that would actually guide the employee through the expense reporting steps in Microsoft Teams, right? So they would just go right into Teams, they would load the Copilot and say, I need to submit an expense report, and it would step them right through it, right? And as they did that, it would be able to validate the receipts, it would check the policy, or basically just confirm it met the compliance or the policy compliance. And then it could answer, the employee's questions after that, right? It's like, what's the status of my expense report? Or, or it has, maybe there's an interaction where there's a problem with the expense report. That could all be handled through the Copilot. So ultimately what that did is it helped, reduce those expense report errors by, as much as 60%. It reimbursed, those reimbursement times dropped, right? And, the accounting team, again, got freed up. They sort of reclaimed a lot of those hours that they were spending each month handling these expense reports. So a couple others that I'd like to mention, these are more hypothetical, but these are some other sort of what I call like notable use cases that you might be able to use a Copilot for. Just a couple that I think stand out, maybe an audit Copilot. So a Copilot that's sort of, built to search financial records, it can flag potential compliance issues, and, maybe it prepares an audit ready report, sort of like on demand, right? So an auditor comes in, you just set them down at a terminal or a work, I said terminal, a workstation, and say, here you go, and show them, give them access to that audit Copilot, and there they go. They're able to get, 80–90% of their answers directly from that audit Copilot. Or maybe, another one might be the procurement Copilot, right? So a Copilot that sort of pulls or is able to pull that contract data, maybe, it's tracking the purchase orders, and allows the Copilot to answer project manager questions, right? And maybe they're doing that from within Teams. So, these are just a few examples. There's really no limit to how a business could apply an AI assistant to support their operations. But hopefully these examples though can help you all imagine sort of the possibilities, right? So let's do this. Let's talk about where the technology might go next. And this is where it even gets more exciting, right? So what's next in sort of that new AI driven financial world, right? And these are just a few, ways that it could go. I mean, obviously it's the future, so nobody has a crystal ball, but I do think that more real-time finance is definitely going to be something we see as this technology matures. So, with AI, finance is going to move from this sort of after the fact reporting to real-time insights, right? Real-time information. And that's going to give leaders that more up-to-date visibility into things like, the cash flows or some sort of KPIs, or even like risk management, right? So just identifying risks sooner and before they actually become a real problem. Predictive decision making. So instead of just explaining the past, right? AI will forecast the trends, right? It can maybe provide some different scenarios, and maybe, and of course, recommend some actions, helping leaders make smarter decisions, right? Not necessarily completely predicting the future, but they can get pretty good at coming up with some scenarios, some possible scenarios. Autonomous processing. So we kind of talked about this earlier. AI agents are already a thing, are already there. But what we'll see is that with AI, they're going to become even more autonomous, right? So routine things like reconciliations, expense reviews, compliance checks, those could run like automatically with just minimal human oversight. Like you might have a dashboard that you're just monitoring any of the exceptions, right? But the actual AI is processing those things itself. And then that's going to turn you into a much more proactive, operation. And then of course, this whole idea of a augmented workforce. So finance teams will shift their focus from this more manual processing to more strategic, right? So they're doing more strategic analysis, they're doing storytelling, they're, maybe developing other or growing the business in other ways. As we train these AI assistants and co-pilots or agents, I should say, to handle a lot of that heavy lifting like we've been talking about. So everybody's probably thinking, this all sounds really cool and exciting, but where would we even start with this, right? So, I wanted to just briefly talk about the roadmap of what this might look like, right? So how do you get started? So first of all, pick the right problems to solve, right? So focus on those biggest pain points or areas where AI could make life easier, right? Like automating reports or maybe speeding up reconciliations, and maybe even dabbling in forecasts, right? But then you got to make sure the data is accurate. You got to make sure it's organized, and then obviously make sure it's reading from a secure source, right? And that will allow the AI to have a real solid foundation to work from, right? I also recommend that everybody sort of start small and then grow it, right? So test AI with maybe a pilot project, see what works, see how it works, and then how your team responds. And then you can kind of roll out the things that work and that seem to have the most value. Roll those out, right, more broadly across the rest of the business. So start it small, keep a pilot team, and then roll it out to a larger group. And then of course, if you're not already, you've got to get your people ready. Train your team. Set up some simple rules for responsible use, of course, and just make sure everyone knows who owns what in an AI-enabled process or an AI driven process, right? So again, I'm talking about starting with using AI assistants, right? So these are the things that work alongside you. They don't necessarily do it for you, right? And then once your organization becomes, comfortable using AI assistants to really augment the way you're working and really speed things up, then you can take a look at maybe leveraging AI agents beyond that to take on some of the actual processing on the back end, right? it's sort of one of these things where you just kind of ease into it. And I do think AI assistants are the best sort of first approach to that. All right. So how can LBMC help you do this, right? So over the last couple of years, LBMC has really been working on our service offerings and ways that we can provide support to our customers. So obviously with AI consulting, so we can provide sort of a readiness assessment, covering a lot of the things I just mentioned a moment ago. We can help with some more strategic AI planning. So, if you're not quite sure kind of where to start, and you need some help with somebody kind of help you develop that sort of first use case internally and kind of figuring out what those right problems to start solving are. We can help with that, right? And then of course we can help you develop it. We have a team that can go in and really create these AI assistants or copilots and Copilot Studio for you. And then we can train you on not only how to use them, but how to create them, right? So that's something that we want to make sure everybody knows, that this technology is meant to be approachable by the end user, by the customers. Okay. This is not technology that's meant for, a business partner, right? Although we're happy to help you with it, but Microsoft really does intend for end users to sort of get their hands on this and really do a lot of this themselves. But they also know that they have a really strong partner channel and companies, partners like LBMC that can help, the organization when needed, or in some cases just supplement their staff to kind of manage it for them, which is fine too. So we have all sorts of support and what we call advisory programs. Some of the advisory programs we're working on now to try to figure out what's the right level of support to incorporate in to those programs. So I did promise that I'd give you a public announcement here, and that I think everybody would be excited about. So, as I said, this is a Microsoft announcement that I thought would be cool to share with you today, since we're on the topic. And this is the fact that the new Microsoft 365 Copilot for Finance is now available for public preview. So it just recently was coming out of its private preview, where it's just an invitation only. It is now available for public preview, what that means is you can sign up and try it out under that new preview program. So what this really is it allows you to sort of maybe work in Excel, for example. In this new finance Copilot can help with things like reconciliations in the data set. It can look at variances in your cash flow forecasts. And it has an easy way to sort of support access to that via, maybe Teams or Outlook, for example. So I strongly encourage everyone to get signed up for this Copilot for Finance preview and give it a try. It'd be a great way. It really would be a great way to sort of get started with these AI assistants, Copilots that we've been talking about today. So and I'll leave it with this. I'll just quickly do a quick recap. So, again, of today's session, I hope it was helpful. We covered a lot of ground, but there really is so much more to talk about, though, on the topic of AI in the workplace. But just to say, our focus today was on the use of AI assistants, like I've said, specifically Copilots, by our accounting and our finance team. So, some of the key points I want everybody to try and remember is that, number one, AI is already automating things like data entry, reconciliation, and reporting for accounting teams right now. Like, there's people are already doing this, right? So the future is now, right? So just note, this is something that I think everybody should start looking into sooner rather than later. You don't want to fall too far behind when it comes to something like this. At least make sure you understand the value. Whether or not it's for you or not that's another decision, but definitely understand what it could possibly do. And then Copilot Studio specifically puts AI assistant development and customization in your hands. It gives you the ability to create the assistance that you need, right? And of course, there's a learning curve that LBMC can help you with on that, but nonetheless, it does allow you to do that. And then, of course, the future of AI in finance, like I was saying, in my opinion, it's all about predictive. It's being about proactive and sort of like this always on, always running mentality, right? We always have somebody's always processing data. Someone's always crunching the numbers. So with all that, I appreciate your time today, everyone. And Don, I think I'm supposed to pass the mic to you at this point.
Thank you, Jason. Just wanted to let everyone know what's coming up on future GP office hours sessions. Next month, we'll be talking about GP power tools and specifically how to improve the efficiency of GP administrative tasks. So you won't want to miss that. In October, many people are beginning to, if you could go back one, are beginning to map out their journey to the cloud. And of course, the two cloud solutions that LBMC Technology Solutions offers are Microsoft Business Central, but we also offer Sage Intacct. And so if you want to take a look at what Sage Intacct has to offer in the October session of GP Office Hours, we'll take a look at that. And then in November, with our last session of 2025, we're going to revisit GP Power Tools, and we'll be looking at the developer tools and giving you an overview of what's available there. Next slide, please. Coming up in October, if you are located in Orlando or if you're going to be in Orlando for Community Summit, we would love for you to be our guest Sunday night, October 19th. We have rented out the entire Moore restaurant. It's the sailboat in the middle of the Orlando Gaylord. I've been told that it's going to be a yacht rock theme. So lots of fun, great meal, an opportunity to network with our team, with other LBMC technology clients. And it's right there on the premises of the Gaylord. So you don't have to worry about getting to and from anywhere. So if you look in the chat, I've got the RSVP link, and that will be in the slides as well. If you are not registered for Community Summit, there is a discount code that you can use. You just need to put in LBMC Tech NO 10, and that will give you a discount on your registration. All right, next slide. This is the one I'm the most proud of. Our experts are who the experts turn to for educational purposes. So at Community Summit, our consultants, as well as Jason, who leads up our D365 and Power Platform practice, will be presenting at Community Summit. Natalie Avery is going to be showing how to build a smart list that shows applied documents in GP. And then she's going to be teaming up with Valerie Sikora to do a session on optimized administration of Dynamics GP Power Tools. Jason is going to be there. It's going to be a fun session on building business solutions just like you would build Legos with Microsoft Power Platform. And then Sandy Wickman, who has a frequent presenter here on GP Office Hours, will be doing a comparison of Dynamics Business Central and Dynamics GP. And the point of that content is to calm the anxious accountant within you. And then our president and CEO, Brian Wilton, is back by popular demand with two sessions that he's done in the past, Dynamics GP Navigation 101 Plus, and when it's time to purge data in Dynamics GP. Jason, thank you so much for presenting today. AI is the hottest topic around, and it's great to see how it fits into the Microsoft strategy, but more important, how it could fit into our day-to-day strategy. So we thank you for your time today. And to our audience, thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. We hope that you found it beneficial, and we look forward to seeing you on future GP Office Hours. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.